the reality. It felt as though I was lugging a grand piano on my back as I jogged down the dusty trail dividing my land from my neighbors. All I craved was a shower, a hot cup of coffee, and a towering plate of pancakes. At 65, I'm still holding on to my fitness, but it demands consistent effort. Every morning, without fail, I rise and hit the pavement, clocking in anywhere from 3 to 6 miles, weather permitting. On this particular morning, like many others, I caught sight of the battered pickup truck belonging to my best friend and neighbor, Wilton Jones. As his truck chugged past, belching and groaning, Wilton offered me a smile and a wave. Perhaps it was the fatigue from my run making me overanalyze, but there was something about his smile that unsettled me. It had the quality of those smirks people wear when they think they've got one over on you. What troubled me was that Wilton wasn't just anyone, he was my closest friend. Our town had its fair share of unpleasant characters, but Wilton had never struck me as one of them. Oddly, it's the small things that linger in your mind long after the moment is gone. That smile of his, distinguished from a friendly one by just a slight stretch of the lips and a flicker in his eyes, haunted me. Reflecting on it, that smile marked the start of a new chapter in my life. As I continued my run, turning onto my property, I spotted my wife, Maddie, heading from the garage back to the house. Our place, once a segment of a larger farmstead, came with this old barn converted into a garage, alongside a modest lake and a patch of forest, the remainder of the land having been sold to a neighboring commercial farm. Seeing Maddie returning to the house so early struck a curious note. Of course, she was free to move about as she wished, yet her early morning visit to the garage seemed out of the ordinary. When I entered our home, she was just descending the stairs, meeting me at the bottom with a kiss. "I struggled to leave the bed today," she mentioned. "Did you just wake up?" I inquired, a sense of curiosity threading my words. "Yeah," she admitted with a hint of embarrassment. "I'm having trouble kicking into gear this morning. Maybe I stayed up too late after the kids arrived. But you go ahead and shower, and I'll have breakfast waiting for you." I paused, observing her. With a playful tap, she nudged me. "Get moving," she teased, her eyes twinkling. "Seems like I'm not the only one dragging my feet today." Maddie has never been the magazine cover type of beautiful. Now at 63, time has touched her looks, but to me, she's more precious than ever. Her smile is framed by laugh lines that add warmth to her face, regardless of her mood. She's a country girl through and through, maintaining her slim figure despite us both putting on a little weight over the years. She might not fit the conventional ideals of beauty, but I find her perfect just the way she is. Her character shines, always speaking kindly of others. 40 years on, I wouldn't trade our life together for anything. So, I let go of the little fib she told and made my way upstairs. Reaching the top, I paused, captivated by the sight before me. Long, wet, blonde hair draped over a robe-clad shoulder, hands gently combing through to ease the knots. A graceful leg peeked out from the robe's slit, leading to a silhouette that took my breath away. Her petite frame accentuated by the robe's tie, and those youthful blue eyes sparkled mischievously at me. "Sorry, Dad," she chuckled, a playful guilt in her grin. "I borrowed your shower, the other one's in use, and I wanted to avoid the mess." "Anytime," I replied, admiring the wisdom in her simple actions. Her smile was a sweet reward. Just then, a whirlwind of energy zipped through the hallway, breaking the moment. "Dylan," she called out, catching our grandson's attention. "Where are your manners?" "Good morning, Mom." "Good morning, Grandpa. Got anything to eat?" he inquires, heading downstairs before anyone can respond. Kate simply shrugs and, with another smile in my direction, goes to change. Showering, the water soothes my aching muscles, and my thoughts drift. Maddie's deceit gnaws at me, leaving me restless. I get dressed and descend to the kitchen. Maddie, sensing my approach, serves me a hot plate with bacon and 3 of her fluffy pancakes as I enter. Sitting at the table opposite my son, Matt, and my lovely daughter-in-law, Kate, Maddie comes and hugs me. Kate, with a smile, gestures across the table. Matt and my grandson, Dylan, engrossed in their meal, barely notice. "When will you hug me like that?" Kate teases Matt. After my pancakes, Matt replies, eliciting laughter from us. He's always been particular about his meals, much like Dylan, who seems to have inherited that trait. "Grandpa, can we go fishing today?" Dylan asks mid-meal. "Sure thing," I respond. Post-breakfast, Maddie applies sunscreen to my face and arms, calling it essential for my well-being. Despite my protests that we're just fishing, not sunbathing, she insists, expressing her care. Fishing occupies our day, and surprisingly, it's exhausting just lounging and chatting by the water. In the evening, I stroll with Dylan and his parents, exploring the changes around our home and reminiscing about old times, guided by Matt's vivid memories of our family and town. Dylan bombarded me with inquiries about my car, his usual fascination. Eventually, I caved and promised him a ride the next day, teasing that he might even get to drive if he behaved. That promise seemed to excite him. After our evening stroll, Dylan hurried to his room, while Kate and Matt cozied up on the sofa for some television. Maddie bid everyone goodnight and tugged me upstairs to our bedroom. "Ned, perhaps I wanted to stay and watch TV with everyone else," I protested. "You just wanted to watch Kate, right?" she teased, half serious. "Come on, you know I can't sleep without you beside me, and I'm really tired." Plus, you need your rest for that early morning run tomorrow. In our room, we got ready for bed. Maddie snuggled close, wrapping her arms around me, and I reciprocated, enveloping her in an embrace. However, sleep seemed elusive as excitement stirred within me. We need to be very quiet, Maddie whispered, mindful of our grandson next door and our son and his friend downstairs. As we lay together, a profound connection ignited between us. The familiar yet always exhilarating sensation of kissing Maddie made the world around us fade away. Our mutual affection, expressed through gentle kisses and tender embraces, created a moment of intimate connection. Despite the years, our physical bond remained strong and effortless, a testament to the enduring passion between us. She leaned in close, her touch gentle yet intentional, guiding me closer with a teasing glint in her eye. "Is this what you want?" she flirted, her voice light and playful. "Or should I consider involving Kate in our plans?" I chuckled, matching her playful tone. "Give me a second to ponder that tempting offer." "No, my dear," she retorted, pulling me in, her voice a mix of jest and earnest. "Kate has her own world to enjoy. This moment, this connection, is exclusively ours." Our encounters, though frequent, always felt imbued with a unique enchantment, each moment together as exhilarating as the first. The profound connection we shared as we came together was ineffable, always leaving me breathless, while Maddie's gentle laughter at my reaction added a layer of intimacy to our bond. "Do you like this?" she murmured, moving with a subtle, rhythmic grace beneath me. Her arms wrapped around me, pulling me deeper into our shared space, our kiss deepening in a passionate embrace. In those moments, Maddie and I would merge into a singular entity, our rhythms synchronized, our sighs intermingling, making it hard to distinguish where one ended and the other began. As Maddie's excitement crescendoed, she expressed herself with fervent urgency, momentarily startling me and breaking the spell. Realizing the shift, she quickly apologized, revealing her deep, instinctual desires, tempered by the reality of our age and the natural limits it imposed. I listened, my mind racing with thoughts. Maddie voiced her wistful longing for another child, praising the deep connection we shared. She pondered the possibilities of our youth, which led me to reflect on our journey as parents and my aspiration to explore the world with her, envisioning a future filled with adventure and serene moments in our later years. She playfully lamented the desire for a partner who would indulge her whimsical thoughts, leading to a lighthearted thread about involving our daughter-in-law, which quickly softened into a declaration of possessive affection, blending humor and sincerity in her claim over our shared moments and connection. We cuddled together as we often did, yet my thoughts raced relentlessly. Maddie seemed oblivious to it all. I was fully aware of our ages and the fact that Maddie could no longer bear children. I also recognized her increased affection towards me. I recalled reading about many women, post-menopause, experiencing a renewed desire for motherhood, akin to how some men facing hair loss might yearn for hair restoration. What Maddie overlooked was her subsequent remark. She proclaimed I was unparalleled, that no one else could match up. Yet, this puzzled me since when we married, Maddie was a young woman with no prior intimate experiences. How could she then make any comparison? I eventually fell asleep, the sound of Maddie's snores fading into the background. My sleep was deep and undisturbed, free of any troubling dreams. Awakening naturally at dawn, I carefully untangled myself from Maddie, noticing her slight resistance to let me go. That morning, an unusual thought crossed my mind. Skipping my daily run wouldn't be so bad. Yet, driven by routine, I gathered my running gear and stepped out quietly, not wishing to disturb the rest of the household. The crisp morning air felt ideal for a run, but my heart wasn't in it. As I started my run, a long unheard song played through my headphones, setting a nostalgic mood. However, my legs felt heavy, and the usual joy of running eluded me. After a short distance, I gave up and headed back, berating myself for the lack of endurance. That's when I noticed a familiar truck parked near my property, a sight that irked me. Approaching the partly open garage door, curiosity mixed with apprehension. Inside the dimly lit space, a shocking scene unfolded. Someone was trespassing, their disrespect alarmingly close to my cherished car. She was lying down, her legs flailing, as well as with her intensely. Her movements synchronized with his, matching his energy. Then, I realized the audacity of the woman. Another man was close to her, involved in their tryst, even as she was with Will. It was clear she was there by choice, as were they all, and in that moment, I understood my life was forever altered. Throughout my life, I've been known for my calm and rational demeanor. I was the one people expected to think things through, resorting to conflict only when absolutely necessary. Known for my ability to understand both sides of an argument, I was the peacemaker who let things go. Yet, when pushed beyond my limits, I could show a fiercely dark side. Near the door, there was a piece of lumber about 3.5 feet long that I found. It was usually there to keep the large barn door open when the wind was strong, preventing it from slamming shut and possibly damaging anything in its path. I appreciated the rustic charm of that old swinging door, and honestly, I was too frugal to consider replacing it with a modern one. In a moment of rage, I picked up a stone and hurled it with all my strength at Will's truck, shattering the windshield. The scene inside my garage abruptly shifted as 3 people quickly gathered their clothes and dressed in haste. Was that him? I heard a familiar voice ask. I'm not sure, Will responded, concerned about the noise outside. Something happened to my truck, though. See you in a few days, Maddie, Will said as he prepared to leave. I'm getting out of here. But I didn't finish. Maddie started to complain. Just leave it, Will interrupted, visibly upset. This is getting strange, and I don't want to get caught up in it. By then, Will was almost fully dressed, grabbing his shirt as he moved toward the door. I recalled the smug look he gave me earlier and wondered how long he'd been mocking me. My anger grew. As Will opened the door to leave, I swung the lumber with all my might, feeling it connect with his body. He let out a scream, falling back into the garage where I struck him several more times. His groans filled the air, this time from pain. Maddie intervened as I stood ready to deliver another strike. Ken, please stop, she pleaded. You might go too far. She reached up, trying to halt my arm, and her touch sent a shiver of revulsion through me. I pushed her away forcefully. She stumbled back onto the straw pile where she had been lying. Never touch me again, I said coldly. Where's the other one, Maddie? There's no one else, Ken, she insisted. I owe you an explanation. Dylan, come out now, or I'll make sure you regret hiding, I shouted angrily. Ignoring her pleas, I moved towards the door, seizing the fuel can I kept for the mower. Ken, what are you thinking? Maddie yelled. Behind me, Will managed to stand and hurried away, sensing the gravity of the situation. I began spreading the fuel across the garage floor as Maddie watched in terror. We need to talk, Ken, she attempted to reason. I admit my fault. I lit a match, poised to ignite it, when Dylan emerged from his hiding spot. The sound of Will's truck escaping filled the air. I'm sorry, Ken, Dylan managed to say. I looked at him, feeling a wave of disdain so intense I struggled to hold back from lashing out with the piece of lumber in my hand. You're no kin of mine anymore, I declared. Leave my home today. But we plan to stay for 2 weeks, he protested. I promise it won't happen again. I'm truly sorry. I don't care about her actions, I said dismissively. I just can't tolerate them in my home. I'm going to ensure your parents know why you can't stay here any longer. Dylan pleaded, please, no. Ken, reconsider this, Maddie implored, positioning herself to block my way. Dylan shared, I was in trouble at school, which is partly why we came here. The plan was to stay together for a few weeks before my parents returned to Chicago, hoping I could stay on for the summer. Ken, must you dismantle the family over this? Maddie pleaded. We can resolve this, I promise. I turned away from the young boy, my son, and faced the woman I once believed I'd spend forever with. Why would I even consider working things out with you? I demanded, my voice heavy with anger. Because we love each other, she replied, her voice carrying a tone of obviousness. She extended her hand towards me, as though she intended to embrace me and soothe the pain, a gesture she had offered countless times over the past 4 decades. Instinctively, I found myself almost reaching out in return. But then, anger surged above the pull of habit, prompting a sharp response. If you dare touch me, I'll make sure you regret it more than you can imagine, I stated coldly, my level tone underscoring the gravity of my words. But, she stuttered, sounding as if the words were a physical blow, you can't possibly mean that. Without another word, I turned and walked into the house, leaving her standing there, alone. Maddie commented. As I watched Ken stride toward the house, a heavy feeling settled in my throat, making it difficult to swallow. It seemed unreal. Surely, Ken hadn't meant the harsh words he'd uttered. But had he actually said anything? True, he had hurled insults in anger, calling me offensive names, and had told our grandson to leave. But I couldn't believe he meant any of it. For the first time in 40 years, Ken's thoughts and actions were a mystery to me. His recent outburst towards his best friend confirmed that he was more upset than I'd ever seen. I felt an urgent need to reach out to him, to prevent any rash actions that might harm our family. Grandma, you have to intervene, Dylan implored from behind me. Dad says I'm running out of chances. I can't mess up again, not now. You should have been more careful, I responded, hastening after Ken. Ken was always pragmatic, focused on the immediate. Despite his anger, he went to take a shower. That's where I found him, and as always, I was struck by how well he had maintained his strength and physique. Shaking off these thoughts, I tried to maintain normalcy. What would you like for breakfast, dear? I inquired, as I often did. He responded sharply, telling me to leave. Despite his harshness, I remained calm, pointing out our long history of intimacy. He insisted on privacy, a change from our usual openness. When he emerged, calmer but still tense, he asked what I wanted. I suggested we postpone our discussion to avoid spoiling the children's visit, hinting at a deeper issue that needed attention later. Ken, however, was unwilling to wait or discuss. He expressed disdain for any facade of normalcy and hinted at the inevitability of everyone learning about our issues. Confused, I questioned him further. He ominously hinted at the repercussions of his actions on Will, his longtime friend, and the potential impact on Will's family and business. Ken, think of the consequences for their family and Will's business, I implored, concerned about the broader implications of his actions. But Ken was unmoved, consumed by his own feelings of betrayal and loss, emphasizing the neglect of his emotion and the well-being of our own family. Ken, I apologize if I caused you pain, I began. That was never my goal. My affection for you is deeper than you can imagine. Dare to repeat that, and I'll lose my temper, he snapped. The transformation in Ken's expression was startling. He went from serene to furious instantly. His resentment and fury were palpable. At that moment, I understood the depth of the hurt I had caused. It dawned on me that I had always assumed Ken's love and our lifelong partnership were given. I never entertained the thought that his love might wane or he might question my profound affection for him. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. I had to diffuse the tension before he acted out in his anguish and potentially caused widespread upset. My aim was to restore some normalcy, allowing him some space to process his feelings. Exiting the bathroom, I headed to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. It was almost 7, and Matt and Kate would soon be awake. I preferred to shield them from the night's events. On my way to the kitchen, I encountered Kate. "Hi, Mom," she greeted. Observing her, I understood my husband's admiration. "My daughter-in-law is genuinely beautiful, not just in appearance but in her kindness. Matt is incredibly lucky to have someone like her." "You're up early, sweetheart," I noted. "Yet, I've not achieved one of my aims," she replied with a beaming smile that could brighten any space. "And what are your plans?" "You're supposed to be relaxing," I reminded her. "I was keen to learn your secret to making those amazing pancakes," she admitted. "But first, I intended to get up early and join Dad for a jog." Her comment made me chuckle. Kate was being modest about her figure. "I'm sure your dad would appreciate the company for his run. Just give him a heads up so he doesn't go too fast. He treats his morning runs quite seriously, and it might be challenging to keep pace right away." She grinned, evidently mulling over the idea of matching her father-in-law's running stamina, unaware of the challenge that might entail. "I had the oddest dream last night, Mom," she shared. "It was about Dylan being in peril, and I couldn't fall asleep again." As I processed her words, she elaborated. "I felt as though Dylan was confronting a huge, fierce bear," she recounted. "Dylan appeared scared, and the bear seemed furious. It felt incredibly vivid." "Did you check on him to ensure he was all right?" I inquired. "Yes, I found him in the kitchen," she grinned. "That boy is always snacking." I had to remind him to wait until breakfast. Within minutes, Ken entered the kitchen and embraced Kate warmly, expressing his love for her and asking her to pass the same message to Matt. His casual attire and silence towards me sparked my concern. I was conflicted. On one side, I was flattered by his intense emotions. It's rare for a woman my age to experience such passionate protection. However, I also felt fear, recognizing the potential risk this could pose to our family's harmony. My attempts to communicate with Ken hadn't been successful, signaling a need for a different approach. The breakfast atmosphere was tense. I excused Ken's absence to Matt and Kate, suggesting he was tied up with a last-minute supplier meeting, which they seemed to accept, particularly Kate. Dylan, however, was notably quiet, mostly playing with his food before asking to leave the table. "Cheer up, Dilly," Kate consoled him. "Grandpa's just busy with work today. You'll spend time with him later." She sighed. "He adores his grandpa. And you too, Mom. It's a strong bond they share. I wish he could have experienced the same with my dad." Kate's optimism usually shone through, making her internal beauty stand out. Yet, her comforting words unintentionally reminded me of the impact of my actions. Even if I managed to keep the family together, the bond between my grandson and husband had been altered. My actions had selfishly hurt my family. After breakfast, Matt suggested going fishing, and Dylan hesitantly agreed, with Kate deciding to join and bringing her iPad. They returned surprisingly soon, unlike the previous day when Ken and Dylan spent the whole day out. I asked, "What happened? Weren't there any fish?" "Dylan wasn't in the mood for fishing," Ken replied, setting a somber mood for the day. By dinner, with no word from Ken, I became anxious, unsure what to tell the kids about his absence. I called him, and after many rings, he picked up. "What?" His tone made it clear I was the last person he wished to speak with, and it stung. "When are you coming back?" I inquired. "Who said I'm returning?" He retorted, chilling me. "Ken, must we spoil Matt's vacation?" I pleaded. "Can't this wait until after he leaves?" "You started this mess," he accused. "Didn't think of that when you were having secret meetups in my garage, did you?" "Ken, we need to talk." "Please, come back," I implored. "Why should I?" "I'm busy delivering on your request," he stated. "I'll be here a while longer." "Is your grandson still there?" "Yes, but Ken, I need time to arrange for him to leave." "I owe you nothing," he cut me off. "For 40 years, I've given you everything. My heart, my devotion, my mind, and all my love, and look where it's gotten me." His calmness was the most alarming aspect of the call. It wasn't just anger. Ken was eerily composed, as if he had methodically thought everything out, delivering conclusions from his reflections. After dinner, Ken arrived home. Matt and Kate hurried to greet him as he entered the house, while Dylan had retreated to his room, feeling unwell. I suspected the reason for his discomfort. Ken settled down and engaged in a lengthy conversation with Matt and Kate, covering a wide range of topics. It was clear Ken was enjoying the interaction. Kate inquired about a photo on the mantel of Ken in a hospital gown, holding Matt on his knee. Matt, being very young at the time, couldn't recall the details but remembered his father as a hero. I remembered it well. Ken indeed was a hero. A hereditary health issue was prevalent in Ken's family, often skipping generations, but with severe consequences when it manifested. Ken's brother had it, and Ken had given his bone marrow in an attempt to save him. The transplant extended his brother's life by about 2 decades before the illness, a type of cancer, aggressively returned. Observing Ken with Matt and Kate, I realized patience was essential. Ken, caring as he was, would eventually reconcile with both Dylan and me. Later, Matt and Kate retired to their rooms, and Ken entered ours, still in his clothes, hardly noticing me. "I need to gather a few things," he mentioned. "I'll sleep in there." "It's time we talked," I asserted. I had resolved to approach him directly, reminiscent of my days managing disputes among schoolchildren. Ken faced me, silent. "Ken, we've shared over 40 years together," I continued. "We've navigated both joys and challenges, always finding resolutions. This situation shouldn't be any different. You left this morning without a word, denying us the chance to discuss what occurred. I believe I at least deserve that conversation. We're married, committed to a life together. I expect more from us. And I expect more than being tied to someone who disregards our vows," he replied, maintaining a low tone. "How long has this been going on? Who else is involved?" "Ken, please let me explain," I implored. "Things aren't as they seem." He sat at the furthest corner of the bed from me. "I'm not harmful," I assured him. "You won't catch anything from me. Just yesterday, you couldn't get enough of me." His reluctance to come near or touch me stung deeply. "Yesterday, I didn't realize I was married to someone who could betray me," he said bitterly. "I didn't know my closest friend would betray me too. Chelsea will hear from me soon." "I thought you'd listen to my side," I responded, trying to keep my voice steady. He just leaned back on the bed, distancing himself even more. "Well, go on, I'm listening," he replied tersely. "Ken, you were my first and only until all this happened. Starting our relationship was intimidating, and I never mentioned, but it was uncomfortable at first. I went along with it because it made you happy, and my affection for you outweighed my discomfort. Eventually, it became enjoyable for me too. My interests varied, but I cherished our intimacy. Everything shifted when I reached my late 40s or early 50s. Ken, I began to lose interest in being intimate. You were wonderful, you never pressured me or made me feel obligated, and you didn't complain. Gradually, as things normalized, our routine became too predictable for me. I could foresee every move you'd make. It lost its excitement, and I craved something different, something more. Even though you were giving it your all, and you were good at it, my frustrations grew because I needed more than routine. My feelings for you were stronger than ever, so I kept silent to avoid hurting you. Then, I encountered Will and learned he was experiencing the opposite problem with Chelsea. She's lost all interest, whereas I wanted more. One thing led to another, and, well, that's how we got here. But you should know, Ken, Will isn't better than you, he's just different. There are no feelings there. He was never a replacement for you. Our connection with him was purely physical, nothing more. And Dylan, well, he discovered what was happening. He pressured me into a situation I never wanted. With him, it was more about novelty and exploring something new. But Ken, please understand, none of this mattered to me as much as our marriage. It's just a confusing time for me. My perspective is that I accommodated your higher desires back then, even when it wasn't my preference. So it seems fair that you could do the same for me now that I need more affection than you seem willing to provide. I had laid out all my arguments, and I noticed he was pondering over them. "So, you never thought to discuss wanting to spice things up or needing more intimacy?" he asked. "I'm much more fit than Will. Whatever he can do, I can surpass. But maybe you're right, perhaps you were just seeking something different." He seemed to be processing his thoughts aloud during our conversation. Then he looked up at me with a smile. "Well, you won't have to endure my dull affection anymore," he remarked. "Ken, that's not what I was trying to achieve," I responded. "Because there won't be any more affection between us," he added. "No, Ken, you're missing my point," I replied, frustration rising in my voice. "It's not what I want. I can stop, if that's what you wish." "There's no need," he said calmly. "I was planning to have Paul bring these over once they were ready, but here, take my copy." He pulled out some folded papers from his jacket. "What are these?" I inquired. "Maddie, you were a teacher," he reminded me. "I presume you haven't forgotten how to read." "Very funny," I retorted, finding my reading glasses on the dresser. As I put them on, Ken went to his closet and began packing some clothes. I was too engrossed in the papers to notice his actions. He exited the room and returned shortly with a duffel bag, continuing to pack. "Ken, why are you doing this?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. "I don't understand. I've explained everything to you. I tolerated what you needed. Why can't my needs be met?" "Because it's not the same," he said sharply. "You're right, I might have desired more in the past. But I compromised with what you were willing to offer because I loved you deeply. Unlike what you did, I didn't seek someone else to fulfill my needs. I accepted what was available out of love for you." His words struck a chord. I had not considered that perspective before. "Do you remember how you used to complain about me wearing my work boots inside?" he asked. "Yes, but what?" I started. "And leaving the toilet seat up, remember that?" he continued. "Well, yes, but," I interjected. "And about me hanging out at the pool hall with the guys after work." He pressed on. "I wasn't fond of that," I replied sharply. "Exactly," he exclaimed, as though he had made a point. "Exactly what?" I questioned. It's just that whenever there's something you don't like or something you want me to do differently, you've always told me straight up. And whenever it was something important, I made changes. Why didn't you give me the chance this time?" He probed. "Because I faltered. Because you just wanted to be with someone else," he stated bluntly. "And, as always, I'm letting you have what you want. Now you're free to meet whoever you wish, without me in your way. The world is vast, and it's filled with endless possibilities. I won't be an obstacle anymore." "Ken, you've never been an obstacle," I countered. "This is just a big misunderstanding." "No, it's not," he countered firmly. "You have all the information, Maddie. You're fully aware. You knew about Chelsea's disinterest. You talked about it with Will, but you never discussed your own feelings with me. It seems you only did enough to satisfy your desires, disregarding the commitment we made. So, I'm setting you free from that promise." "But that's not what I want," I protested. "And I don't want to stay married to someone who's unfaithful," he declared. "But I'm not unfaithful, am I?" I questioned, my voice betraying my doubt. "I've initiated the divorce amicably," he explained. "We'll split everything fairly. I want to make this as smooth as possible, Maddie. The house stays with me, it's been in my family for generations. Yet, I don't want you to suffer or face difficulties, so you can stay here until you move on or start a new relationship. However, I won't dictate your future choices, but please, respect my space and don't bring any partners here. I'll have someone check on the place occasionally. If that rule is broken, you'll have to leave immediately. Ken, I can't envision being with anyone but you." "You're taking this too far," I told him. "It was just a fling. You and I are meant to be together. But now, after 40 years, you're ready to walk away." "Actually, Maddie, you're the one who walked away. You closed off to pursue something trivial," he started. "It was just a fling, okay," I interrupted. "I admit I was wrong. But, Ken, think about it. I spent brief moments with Will while you were out jogging. You spent more time jogging than Will and I spent together. Let's say Will and I had moments, 20 minutes at a time, 3 times a week. That's 1 hour a week. You love numbers. Out of 168 hours in a week, 167 of those, my focus is on you." "But," he tried to interject. "There are no buts," I cut him off. "I devote more time to our intimacy than I ever did with Will." "I was going to say, I never consented to share you or to have a part-time partner," he said. "You went ahead without considering my feelings because you knew I wouldn't agree." "I've already promised to end it," I reassured him, "and revert to a mundane routine with me." He questioned. "I wouldn't want to impose that on you." "But Ken, I love you. I don't want to separate," I pleaded. "That's the issue, Maddie," he replied. "My love for you was so deep that when I caught you with Will, I lost it. I'm relieved you stopped me because I was close to losing control. That rage obliterated the love I had for you. And even if I could rediscover that love, the trust is gone. You would be happier with Will. Just ensure he never crosses my threshold, or you'll find yourself without a home. Once I'm gone, or unable to manage, the house will go to Matt and Kate, if they're interested. After them, it's Ben's children's turn," he stated, pointedly omitting Dylan. "How should I explain this to Matt and Kate?" I wondered. "Just do what you always do," he retorted. "Craft a story that, while overlooking the facts, justifies your actions." I faced everything on my own, watching in despair as the man I cherished left my world. He took only the essentials, his car barely accommodating his belongings. I pondered his next steps, secretly wishing he'd return to me out of necessity. The following day, I fabricated a story for the kids, claiming Ken had urgent business out of town, though I doubted they were completely fooled. The atmosphere at home turned tense, my attempts to maintain normalcy barely masking my sorrow. Dylan sensed the truth and felt responsible. Despite being 20, his reactions were immature, longing for the familiar comfort of home. His bond with Ken was strong, and losing his grandfather deeply affected him. A few days post Ken's departure, Chelsea visited, distraught. Will had suffered a car accident, his condition critical. He had multiple injuries, but the crash also aggravated a long-standing health issue, leading to a severe cardiac event and resulting in a coma. Chelsea briefly returned home to gather her things and update Ken on Will's status. I continued the narrative of Ken's business trip. Dylan went back to Chicago with Matt and Kate, who hoped to return by Christmas. Meanwhile, I supported Chelsea at the hospital, feeling guilty for the web of lies and the underlying cause of Will's condition. Over time, Chelsea and I grew closer, my support driven by remorse. Despite learning from doctors that Will's health was precarious before the incident, I grappled with the reality of Ken's role in his decline. As Christmas approached, I had to confront the truth with the kids, revealing Ken's departure without delving into specifics, framing it as a challenge we needed to address. Surprisingly, they were okay with it. I sensed that Matt was disappointed in Ken for abandoning me, while Kate just remarked that Ken probably had his reasons. This almost sparked a heated debate between them. During their Christmas visit, Dylan entered my room one night while his parents were out. It was our first moment alone in a while. Unexpectedly, he made an inappropriate move towards me, which I swiftly countered by striking him in the stomach, causing him to be physically ill. He appeared wounded as I confronted him, highlighting his role in my marital troubles and the family discord. I informed him bitterly about his diminished standing in his grandfather's will and my resolve to stay faithful to my former values. My words felt poignant, wishing I had expressed such sentiments before my marriage ended. After that holiday season, a year post Ken's departure, Matt and Kate ended their marriage. Both occasionally reached out, suggesting visits from Dylan, which I tactfully declined. Dylan's life deteriorated further, facing academic and employment failures and constant troubles. After Will's passing, Chelsea found new love with a man she met in a medical setting, leading to a supportive and loving relationship despite his physical challenges. My attempts at dating bore little fruit. My heart still ached for Ken, and it seemed mutual interest was scarce. My online dating efforts were fruitless, and the few encounters I had were far from fulfilling, both physically and emotionally. This led me to reflect on my life's missteps. I felt like a lonely person who had sabotaged her own happiness, losing interest in intimate relationships. My yearning had vanished since Ken's departure, with my few attempts driven more by curiosity than actual desire. I recognized that my past experiences, even with Will, were only meaningful because of Ken. Without him, I felt incomplete. Years later, facing my reflection, I saw someone I barely recognized, aged beyond my years, a stark contrast to my once youthful demeanor. And then everything spiraled out of control. Matt called me out of the blue. It had been months since we last spoke. I missed the call, but he left a voicemail. His voice was strained, filled with emotion, urging me to call back or reach out to Kate if I couldn't speak to him. Before I had the chance to return his call, Kate showed up at my place. Peering through the kitchen door's glass, I saw her usually vibrant face now weary and somber, clearly affected by her recent divorce. This struck me as peculiar because their split had been amicable. Upon opening the door, she embraced me so fiercely we nearly tumbled over. "Kate, sweetheart, I'm not as young as I used to be," I joked, worried about my frailty. But her worried expression made me regret my light-hearted remark, a reminder of the gentleness that Ken always admired in her. "I was just kidding, Kate," I reassured her. "What's the matter?" "It's Dylan," she sobbed, her voice a mixture of anguish and fear that only a mother could express, hinting at some serious trouble with my grandson, Dylan. I hadn't seen much of Dylan since an incident years ago that led to a physical altercation between us. My subsequent understanding of my health issues, a hormonal imbalance, explained much of my past behavior, which cost me my marriage and strained family relations. While I took responsibility for my actions, part of me also held Dylan and the late Will accountable. I felt betrayed by Dylan's actions, which also seemed to betray the family, especially after the distress it caused Ken. "Mom, Dylan's got it," Kate lamented, her voice filled with worry. "Dylan has what?" I inquired, skepticism lacing my words. I doubted it was employment-related. Dylan had been exploiting his parents' guilt post-divorce, milking them for money. Oddly, they overlooked that Dylan was well into adulthood at the time of their split. "My son has the family cancer," she sobbed. A chill raced through me. "Mom, what are we going to do?" she lamented. "We'll find top-notch doctors," I assured, offering a comforting embrace. I wished I could alleviate her anguish, feeling sympathetic towards Kate alone. Dylan, in my eyes, remained untrustworthy. "Mom, could you contact Dad for us?" she pleaded. Matt mentioned Dad once helped his brother with a bone marrow donation. He possesses unique antibodies that manage to suppress the disease temporarily. I met her plea with a puzzled stare. "Why not use Matt's bone marrow, or perhaps one of Ben's kids?" I suggested. "Matt's not a perfect match. He lacks the necessary antibodies. And I'm completely incompatible. Plus, Ben's kids are girls, and this condition seems to affect only males," she explained. As she detailed Dylan's plight and their efforts thus far, Matt walked in. Observing him, I couldn't help but notice the stark resemblance to his father, yet the years seemed to weigh heavily on him. At 46, Matt appeared prematurely aged, unlike Ken, who maintained a youthful aura in his late 60s. Upon seeing Kate, Matt embraced her, offering words of reassurance. My comment, "I would never deal with this, it's a nightmare. There's other women out there. This isn't the life you want." Subscribe and hit the bell, you will see ending in part 2 very soon.